Oh, your turn. Let me put some in yours.
Oh shit! That's enough.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's so nice.
I had to lick that off the tip then and say, oh.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Fucking hell. Hello, everyone.
I stopped as soon as I'd realised that I'd said
I
something.
know. I heard
and
it
was
in
too
your
late.
voice. I know. You're like, oh, shit, fucking...
It's too late, I'd already said it.
Like that noise your mum made that time.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's right, my mum is a listener. That's not...
Anyway. Okay.
Great, you're going to ask me about that now.
She won't listen to this one. I'll just distract her for a week.
For a week. Sorry, I love you.
Right. Welcome back. Oh no, I've forgotten what episode.
Do you know what?
Oh,
Can I just say something? Somebody tweeted out this week. You know when they said about the sound effect and how like real it was.
Oh yeah, we're so sorry.
Okay, right. I first read that tweet and I was so happy. I was like, oh my god, someone's recognising my sound effects. I don't even remember what sound effect I did last week. I didn't do a sound effect.
That's so weird because that's what I thought they were talking about as well.
I was like, oh my god, they think my sound effects are good.
Because I was tweeted 2 or 3 separate times about the sound effect in the last podcast, which was that the puppy knocked my phone, or Castro knocked the phone by accident, and then I pressed a sound effect which we can't hear, but you can, right?
And we don't listen back. Well, occasionally we do. But
yeah, the point of this podcast is that we drink, we chat, and then we just publish them. We don't edit them.
Kick and run.
Yeah, fucking Stokey kick and run. But yeah, so we didn't know. But yeah, I saw those tweets as well, and I thought, oh, that's so nice. They're talking about Jaimi's sound effects as she does. So I was thinking about Pikachu and shit, and I was like, so nice. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, never mind.
Right, actually, do you know what? I'm going to bring back the original and best sound effect because we've got so many new listeners now.
I know what's coming.
Yeah, we
Can
are.
I guess what it is?
Can I just say that we hit over 26k downloads?
Yeah, we did. 26,000 downloads.
What are you all doing?
I know. It's because they're in lockdown. When they're out of lockdown, that's it. We won't see them for dust.
Do you know what?
They'll forget about us.
I've been listening to podcasts recently, so...
Have you?
Yeah, I listened to the Danny and Danny Dyer in the shower the other day because it was fuck all else on Spotify. I just wanted something that made me laugh, but it didn't make me laugh. So.
Dot Perth with Surf, that one.
It's gonna be Perth with Surf.
Oh my shitting god!
It's just an annoying.
I actually don't understand the advert either.
It's just to get you to remember it.
No, I know, but I don't understand what it
smells
means.
nice no matter where you are, even if you're in the jungle.
Is that what it means? Fucking, that's gone over my head. Right over my head.
That's why she smells it and she giggles because it makes her so happy. Because girls like flowers and nice smells
and laundry.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking love laundry. I actually do love laundry though.
No, you don't. You don't like doing laundry. You don't like putting it away.
I love.
You like the smell of it when we've got.
Yeah, but I also like the satisfaction of when I say to you, right, I'm going to do loads of laundry, and then we're going to put it all away.
That's when you're stressed about it, and then you're not stressed about it anymore because it's done.
Well,
you don't enjoy the process of it.
I don't enjoy the process of it because it's heavy, and there's loads of it. But at some point, you've got to admit defeat when you've got no knickers left.
And when I've got no knickers left, and I've got no knickers of yours.
I know,
left.
That's why I never have any left, because when Jamie's gone through it, she's just not dipping into my drawer. So like my underwear all goes, and I'm like,
Anyway, go on then, guess the sound effect.
Is it the throat, the throat Mario?
It is the throat Mario.
I knew it was the throat Mario.
Okay, you ready? I need to move the mic. We're doing this podcast from bed because...
We do loads of podcasts from bed. Stop outing us.
We don't do it
You're
often.
a fucker for outing us for shit. Especially me, outing me on social media.
That's what you're talking about.
You fucking
Ibiza.
Fuck off.
Anyway, get ready for this. There you go. I did that from my mouth.
From your throat?
I did it from my... Yeah.
Your mouth was shut the entire time. It's from your throat.
Yeah, but the noise came out of my mouth still.
It came out your nose.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, it's your nose.
Oh yeah, it comes out my nose.
If you're wondering why you listen to this podcast, now would be a good time to turn off.
Oh, that's... No, like, no.
No, we're joking. We are going to have a discussion today.
It's going to be pressing.
Yeah. It's very current for me at the moment because I'm writing my second book, which I can't go into major detail about because my publishers and my agent will tell me off. But it is on the topic of psychiatry. And I would suggest that most of you probably know what my views are around that. But I'm going to...
When they're not misconstrued.
Yeah, when they're not deliberately twisted. But we are going to discuss some questions that I have written down for us to talk about together. About psychiatry and its intersection with feminism. Because I thought that might be interesting.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, but I wanted to go right back to begin with and ask you, how were you originally taught what mental health was?
I sort of... My generation was like the Tumblr generation. So... sort of came through there. I wasn't really that active on Tumblr. I wasn't that fucking sad where they all had anime profile pictures and shit.
They still do.
And they've moved over to Twitter now. But it was sort of through there, and it was sort of conveyed to me like mental health is the same as physical health. Like, why is there taboo? And this is one of the first times that I thought, oh, I understand it. Why is there such taboo about when you've got a problem with your mental health, but if you break your leg,
yes, I remember
it's
that.
fine, and like people understand, and they sign your cast.
Where did you learn that? Where were those messages coming from?
Something.
Okay, so the internet.
Yeah, definitely.
What about school? You learn about mental health at school?
No. I think they're starting to do a bit about that now, aren't they?
Yeah,
like
they are
nowadays,
doing a lot more now.
No, not when I was at school.
What about...
When I was at school,
what
they
about your
told me
mum?
that...
Or your family or friends?
Friends a bit, yeah. Not really. It wasn't... So, like, I don't know, like, there would be a bit, like, with my mum, but the understanding wasn't really there that much when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And, well, when we were growing up. And I use the term understanding quite loosely. But, yeah, I think it's just sort of... It's something that's slowly sort of made its way into society, because I think more and more people are struggling at the end of the day. But, you know, that could be for loads of different reasons. What about you?
I don't remember any education, you know, like lessons or anything like that. I don't remember anything like that. I do remember the whole... So, there's not a massive age gap between me and you, but me and Jaimi often talk about the fact that our age gap's quite small, really. But because of probably social media and the internet, sometimes it can feel big.
Yeah, it's like start of the 90s versus the end of the 90s.
Yeah, pretty much. So the reason that I say that is because I remember conversations around mental health before the whole it's the same as breaking your leg. I remember it before. I remember that being a new thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So what was it when? And it might jog my memory.
People used to say just say stuff like, "Oh, you'll end up in the asylum," or "You're fucking crazy," or
"Oh, yeah."
Like,
but that's not.
They're
but
insane.
That's like
or,
really old.
Or people would say stuff like, "She's got a bit of a screw loose."
But people would use that for somebody who, not necessarily someone who perhaps even would be diagnosed with anything today.
You didn't hear a lot of diagnoses either.
No, but like
so when I was younger, people wouldn't talk about like, oh, they've got PTSD, or they've got anxiety disorder.
The only time people talk about PTSD was soldiers.
Yeah, veterans.
Yeah, and that's like as far as it went. But sort of anxiety and depression. Do you remember when they started really coming coming about, those terms?
Probably about, that I remember really heavily, was probably 2010 onwards.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say a little bit later.
I was just thinking about where I was working
anxious,
at the time.
Depressed, and then it turned into anxiety disorder. Anxious. Oh, I'm a bit anxious. People sort of, and then there was YouTubers like Zoe Sugg. I remember she spoke about anxiety, that she had anxiety. So I think a lot of it, for me, a lot of the newer stuff was coming from like the internet generation of the old YouTubers and the like sort of new Tumblr lot. But sort of perhaps one of the reasons it came from like shitty infographics and like people totally misinterpreting and misreading and being shit researchers and then putting it on the internet, and then they got it into like, the first ever sorts of like what we would consider memes. Which were easily shared. And unfortunately, I think that it's caused a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation, when people think they're doing the right thing, but actually, arguably not.
I totally agree with that. So the bit around that you just gave, the example that was given in public campaigns, and it was given, just generally that like mental health is the same as physical health. If you break a leg, you go to a doctor. If you've got a mental health issue, you go to the doctor. And there was a lot of effort that went into normalising mental health and claiming that it was the same as having a physical health issue, which it arguably isn't. And I remember in all the years I've been teaching, I've always said to my students, the reason that analogy doesn't work is because a broken leg is a broken leg all over the world. If you break your leg, it's broken in Iran and it's broken in America and it's broken in China, right? But if someone in America tells you that you've got borderline personality disorder, is that the same in every country? No. Because the diagnosis and the criteria is completely different. It is completely different, right? So for example, my personality and your personality would definitely be considered disordered in other countries and traditions and cultures.
Yeah, of course.
So here, it's potentially seen as assertive, confident, outspoken, whatever. But in other countries,
it's everything in this country.
But in this country, in another country, we could be seen as mentally ill. And
I see what you mean.
That's just what I'm sort of saying about like.
Sorry, I get what you mean.
So the broken leg analogy doesn't make any sense because
a broken leg in every country is a broken leg.
Yeah, it's not subjective, is it? It's broken or it's not broken.
Yeah,
they use
100%.
an X-ray. It has a diagnostic test. You look at it. Is the bone together? Yes. No. Is it fractured? Yes. No. Has it come apart? Is there shards coming off it? Like, it's not the same with mental health. So it's not the same as physical health. And like you just said, I think people were trying to do the right thing to try and normalise all forms of mental health issues. But what they actually did was create a false equivalence, like a false analogy.
Yeah.
Because the other thing about that is...
And also, if I can just interject whilst I remember, I think
sure.
that it's forced the sort of psychiatry industry, if you like, to push forward in in their what they would class as medicine way before the research is there. So with a broken leg, we know this is a broken leg. That's your diagnosis. The treatment is put it in plaster, right? You feel like this, and this. Okay, let's say, okay, it's this disorder, and we're going to give you this treatment or this treatment or this treatment. So with like sort of physical health stuff, pretty much we're there with the research, we're there with diagnostics, we're there with the treatment. But because we've tried to normalise mental health, and we've done that in a way which says it's the same as physical health, it's pushed psychiatry to move into, and people to put their sort of, I guess, trust in psychiatrists to be like, I need a diagnosis and because that means I'll get treatment and that means I'll feel better.
And then I'll be better.
And the field isn't there yet.
No,
so there's that research on, what was it, on depression, where you know the study better than I do.
Which one?
About the placebo.
Oh yeah, so over the years there's been hundreds of studies that
it's been lots,
that tests antidepressants like SSRIs against a sugar pill, placebo, and placebo tends to perform exactly the same, if not better, than an antidepressant. But what also is so interesting about those studies is that they will, in some cases, they will take certain people off antidepressants and put them on a placebo, and then they will argue that the placebo made them feel worse. But what they're not accounting for is withdrawal effects.
Yeah.
So if you take someone suddenly off an SSRI that they've been on for ages and go, here's a fucking sugar pill, of course they're going to fucking feel worse. You've just taken them off a chemical that you've had them on for years. Yeah. So then they often don't take that into account in the study where they go, oh, well, we took them off the antidepressants and suddenly they felt worse and fuck knows why. Well, maybe it's because they're addicted to the drugs that you've had them on for years.
Yeah.
But, what you just said is so valid, and it's the way I think about it as well. And then, to link into what Jaimi just said, right, what you've basically got is it's like faux medicine.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? It's that psychiatry is trying to be medicine, except it isn't medicine because it has no diagnostic tests. Yeah. It has no blood test. It has no fluid test. It has no scans. It has no x-rays. It has no, what's the word I'm looking for? Upper or lower limits of something that you can test. So, like, if you thought that you might have pre-diabetes or you thought you might be diabetic, you go to your doctor. There is a specific test. It has been tested thousands and thousands of times. We know that it works. We know the upper and lower limits of what your insulin levels should be, what your blood sugar should sit at. We know, for example, that some tests require you to fast beforehand because then we can test the correct levels in your bloodstream. It's a very scientific process. Psychiatry is not scientific in the same way, but we pretend it is because we went down that sort of, it's the same as physical health. So I was reading a study last year because currently there is absolutely no evidence for the chemical imbalance theory, that the reason that you have depression or anxiety is because you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain. That is, and people need to realise this in the general public, that is a theory and nothing more. That is like guesswork. And the reason that it's guesswork is because we have no evidence of that. So, for example, for those of you listening, or, who know someone, or you have yourself been to your GP who has then given you an antidepressant, how did they know that your serotonin levels were not correct?
Yeah.
Did they test your serotonin levels? Did they do some sort of brain fluid test? Have they checked your neurotransmitters? Was there something that they checked at your synapses? Have they checked synaptic reuptake? No. Of course they fucking haven't, because they don't know how to do that. We don't know how to do that yet. So I was reading this study about a year ago that attempted to do it. And the only way they could come up with to actually test whether people with so-called depression or anxiety had low serotonin levels in the brain, which is what the antidepressants do. It's an SSRI, which is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it changes the way that the brain takes up serotonin in the brain, in the synapses in the brain, right? So the only way they could try to see whether that was correct was to do samples of spinal fluid, and that's pretty serious. I mean, imagine going to your GP and being like, I've been feeling really low recently, I've lost my job, and he's like, okay, get on the table, just take a bit of spinal fluid. We'll have that. And actually, the findings, said that they actually couldn't determine it. Even spinal fluid, where they could check levels of serotonin from the brain, still was not accurate enough in any way to diagnose depression. Yeah. Shockingly.
Okay, I found something on my phone. So I spoke a few weeks ago. We might even end up coming onto this and we can a bit. But just whilst I've got it up, because I know that there will be listeners having the same questions that were tweeted at me when I spoke about it the other week. So the other week I tweeted that I used to feel validated by being given psychiatric medication after sexual abuse. It made me feel believed, but now I realise it's just another way society quickly shuts up and blames the victim rather than deal with the male violence epidemic, right? And someone's saying, oh, well, what was it he was saying? He was saying that if you take a brain scan, you can see deterioration during mental disorders. Is that true?
No.
Is there any evidence that suggests that, or...?
Not deterioration of the brain, no, of course not.
Okay.
There's nothing like that. The best person to ask about that's Rach.
Yeah, okay.
But no, not that I'm aware of at all. There's no... That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, well, so another one is...
Can I just say, sorry, just to answer in case anyone's listening, the reason that can't be true around deterioration of brain tissue or of...
Wouldn't that be dementia?
Well, that's connections in the brain, isn't
it?
But what I was going to say is, if that was true, why would SSRIs help that?
Yeah.
If you think about it, so if psychiatry, so if someone in psychiatry is arguing, oh well, people with depression have deteriorating brain tissue, well, what the fuck's that got to do with SSRIs? Why would one pill a day help brain tissue to regenerate?
And just explain what SSRIs are.
I already did.
Oh, okay.
While you were reading.
I'm sorry, I was trying to find it just because I knew that people would have these things. Okay, and then another one, an MRI can show the brain reacting to stimuli, and people with those disorders have different reactions across the different brain tests they've done.
So some of the things that he's bringing up here are is neuropsychology. So some psychiatry doesn't even go that far. Most psychiatry is the belief system that all mental health issues have a biological cause, so a chemical imbalance or a neurophysical or neuroanatomical cause, right? So some of it is neuropsych, but most of it is around sort of chemical imbalances and psychopathology and things like that, right? So he's saying about MRIs and stimuli, of course, but we are still learning, and it's not necessarily MRIs, it'll be fMRIs, which is, they're called functional MRIs. So that basically is that someone performs a task or they do something and then they can use the MRI machine to look at brain activity. The thing is about that is that the best advice that I give anybody around anyone throwing around neuroscience is that it's an extremely young field. So, some of these studies that look at brain activity in people with different so-called mental health issues, the sample size is like 10 people or 7 people or like 13 people, which is a problem in itself. But also, just because it shows brain activity the rest of it is down to interpretation. There are certain...
there's surely not out of 7 or 10 people. That's not a big enough sample size.
The problem that you have with sample sizes in neuroscience and neuropsychology is that they're extremely expensive studies for universities, and only certain universities can afford huge MRI, fMRI, PET scanners and things like that. And then obviously you've got master's students and PhD students and academics using them. They are very expensive studies to run, so the samples tend to be fairly small. Because everybody wants access to it. Most universities only have one MRI machine. Some have 2.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the benefit is to, I don't know, society or whatever? What do you think the benefit is of convincing the public that they are mentally ill and to believe in psychiatry and psychiatric models over a trauma-informed understanding of, humans are distressed, humans have been subjected to trauma, humans are not coping, and therefore your behaviour changes, your feelings change, your dreams change, your body changes, your heart rate changes. That if you're put under enough stress, everything about you will change. So what is the benefit of, instead of saying to someone, well, actually, I think that you're completely normal. You've been through so much, and now you're, I don't know, anxious and paranoid, and you are not sleeping properly, and you've not been eating, and therefore you've got all these symptoms. You're now tired. You're now having panic attacks. You're not thinking straight because of all these other things. You know, those to me, they look like very obvious answers. What's the benefit of saying to a member of the public, no, it's none of those things. It's actually in your brain, and you need this pill.
Yeah, I've very slightly touched on this, but I think I have like 2 or 3 reasons, and I don't know if these like individual reasons or whether, well, they do all connect up. But one of them is that it's an overwhelming majority of women or like black or Asian people or whatever who are diagnosed with psychiatric disorders, and if we acknowledge that, and if we acknowledge that it tends to be after abuse, then we've got to acknowledge that there is an epidemic of abuse, like being carried out against women or racially aggravated or whatever. And then the other one is it's cheaper. It's way cheaper to like just, you know, give someone some psychiatric drugs and that makes them feel a bit numb or whatever.
Yeah.
And even if they don't work, and even when you, like with those trials that you were telling me about that show that a placebo pill works just the same, then doesn't that suggest that it's like about your surroundings rather than inside your own head?
Yeah,
like and like physically inside your head. Does that make sense? What's the correct terminology for that?
Like, you mean like chemically or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Or physiologically?
Yeah, I guess.
It always makes me think about when I worked in homelessness and poverty and stuff, the amount of people who were literally living on the streets that were being given antidepressants.
Yeah.
And I was like, you've got to be fucking joking me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that'll make them feel better.
Yeah.
They're still on the streets, but don't worry, because now they've got their antidepressants.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you've not solved any of their oppression or
exactly.
any of their fears.
So it's so much easier to put people on psychiatric drugs, and there are some people I know who've been diagnosed with BPD or whatever do get therapy, but I know for a fact that most people's like experience with therapy is that they get passed from pillar to post. Be like, oh, we don't really deal with that sort of thing. Oh, I think you're a bit too advanced for this, and
it's like, oh, it's too bad, or they'll be like, it's not bad enough. Because that's the other thing, is that psychiatry causes gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, well, you can only have this service if
not
you've got a diagnosis.
Not the same as trauma-informed counselling.
Yeah, no, not
psychiatric counselling, is that even a thing?
No, you can have sessions with a psychiatrist, and you can have sessions with a psychologist that's medical model, but it depends really on what the approach is that particular professional takes. And some psychiatrists, I'd say a handful, but there are some psychiatrists that are actually very critical of medical model and psychiatry themselves, and they refuse to work in it, and they choose to work in a more humanistic way.
Can I just say one thing?
The other thing I was going to ask you about, I don't know if you're going to bring this up, is about validation. Because that's what you said originally in that tweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I get that a lot. People contact me and say, well, you know, I was suffering this, and this, and now I've finally got a label for it, and it makes me feel valid, and you shouldn't be shaming me. And like,
can I just say one thing, just going back? The first time we sort of spoke about these things, the way I saw it was in politics, you have the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. The Conservatives are known for short, quick fixes. So, for example, selling off our assets to bring the national debt down, right? Whereas Labour are like, no, we need to invest in the people so that we can build, you know, a stronger economy for the future that's built to last, blah, 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 right? So why are left-wing people not applying that same logic to this? Because if we invest in trauma-informed therapy, strength-based counselling, you know, systemic changes in sexism, racism, ableism, that would be a stronger way forward than a cheap fix for the here and now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just wanted to mention that before it went out of my head. Yeah. No, I completely... Would you agree with that?
No, I absolutely agree. And that actually is one of the other questions that I wanted to...
I'm sorry, I probably should have looked at the questions.
No, that's fine. There is a couple of other questions. I don't know if we're going to get to cover them, but I did want to just pick up on like what you said about validation, right? That is one of the most common things people say to me because I'm so critical of, you know, the medical model in psychiatry and diagnosing women and girls with just made up bullshit disorders, instead of, you know, validating what actually was done to them by other people.
Yep.
And you know, people say to you, well, I feel validated now I have my diagnosis.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Did you?
Yeah, I felt like I was believed. I had a professional. I went to the doctor and I said, I've been sexually assaulted. It's going through court. I'm at sixth form. I'm really struggling. These are my symptoms. Blah blah blah. And then I got put on beta blockers because I was having panic attacks and my heart rate, and then I was fainting. And then they found there was nothing wrong with my heart. Put me on beta blockers for anxiety.
Yeah. And
I felt like, I am believed. See, that has had an impact on me.
Yeah.
So therefore I'm not lying, I'm not making up. That actually happened because when someone hits you physically, you've got a bruise.
Yeah.
But when you're like raped or sexually assaulted or whatever, or
you've been oppressed, abused, bullied.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't have like a physical mark where you can be like, see, that's the proof, because it's not there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately the sort of scars are mental, but that's the sort of things. It leaves mental scars. No, it doesn't.
No. Yeah, but scars is another physical term,
what I mean,
isn't it?
That we use in...
Yeah, to talk about mental health in the wrong way. It's the same with the words like recovery, relapse, cure, treatment. They're all medical terms to talk about
I think there are
trauma.
Some things that you can use for like relapse with like mental health, like when people have eating disorders and stuff. A lot of that is mental, and they can relapse because it's, you know, I think that's fair.
I try to stay away from any medical terminology because it's not... Relapse makes it sound like they've like failed and gone back into it, but you'll often find that it's because whatever it is that's underlying that eating disorder has not actually been processed, because nobody gives a fuck.
And that's why women and sort of marginalised groups are still the most likely to be diagnosed. And it goes back centuries, right? I mean, this is called the Wandering Womb podcast.
Yeah, which was based on hysteria.
Which then turned into... what was it after?
Borderline. Well, it was called histrionic disorder or histrionic personality disorder.
That was it, yeah.
And then it moved to borderline personality disorder, and now it's known as emotionally unstable personality disorder.
Yeah.
Which is...
It's
all
women,
the same criteria
like
as hysteria.
women or black people or Asian people or disabled people or just people, working class people.
Interestingly,
who are oppressed.
Bisexual women have a higher incidence of so-called borderline personality disorder diagnosis, because believe it or not, one of the criteria for borderline personality disorder is bisexuality.
You can't make your mind up.
Yeah, well, they argue that it's because of some sort of disordered sexuality and disordered thinking around your sexuality. Yeah. So if you're bisexual and female...
So it's homophobia as well.
Yeah, of course it fucking is. Okay, well, so let's bring it into this, right? There's this final question that I want to ask, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah.
Is radical feminism, our brand, our theories of feminism, is it compatible with psychiatry?
You know my views on that. And I know yours.
Do you feel like... Right, so...
How can we... So radical feminism inherently is intersectional.
Yeah,
should
be. Yeah, absolutely.
It is inherently. We acknowledge that globally, women and girls are oppressed
on their sex, based on their sex,
throughout different time periods, different cultures, different religions. But the thing that remains is that they're female.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So, how can we go from acknowledging that to thinking that, oh yeah, of course it's totally okay and there's nothing wrong with the fact that women, especially black women, are disproportionately diagnosed with personality disorders.
Yeah.
After they've been raped.
Yep.
After they've been subject to DV.
And also, as you will probably find, and I'm writing about it in the book, and if you were to like talk to black women who've been through the mental health system, they very often will be diagnosed with different forms of disorders when they've been subjected to racism for years as well.
Yeah, because they get told that, oh, it's in your head, it's not really
paranoia.
Happening.
Yeah, they get told they're delusional. Yeah, I know.
And it is.
It's
it is
disgusting.
happening. Like, because, and I will never understand that, but sometimes people look at us very slightly weird because we're lesbians, and they've figured out we're lesbians, and like, most people wouldn't even notice that we've been looked at weird. And obviously, like, I'll never understand what it's like to be black or Asian, but they will get those looks in from like different people or whatever.
Well, they get it constantly.
Yeah, and then if they're sad about it or upset or whatever, or they try and talk about it, they'll get told that it's in their head.
Yeah,
and it's not actually happening.
It's also
because
the
psychiatry
trauma.
is inherently racist.
It is a social and personal trauma to live in a racist society where you are very clearly not white. And you will be treated like that every day by at least one person. And the fact that you've been brought up as a child, you know, you might have had to have been given advice by your parents, like, you know, people might say this to you, or that's a bad word and it's about our heritage, or it's about our history, or, you know, it means this and that's what they're saying, or that's why they called you that, or, you know, things like that. And if you live in that level of trauma and it's not recognised as a trauma necessarily at all, it's always disgusted me that all the women that I've come across, it's not in ACEs, but fuck all's in ACEs. I can't even get into
but
that.
But that's ACEs' medical model.
Yeah, it is, although
it came from medical model. Well,
yeah, kind of. Originally it came from population level research. But in terms of whether psychiatry can be compatible with radical feminism, I have spent years mulling this over, and I have definitely got to the point now where I feel like it can't. And it is starting to really disappoint me, the amount of feminist thinkers and writers and speakers who fall into psychiatric slurs and psychiatric random diagnoses of people they don't like.
Yeah.
Psychiatric
excusing a lot of, I've seen like people who are radical feminists and they might not even realise it, diagnosing abusers.
Yeah, being like always a cluster B, you know, personality disorder, psychopath, all this bullshit, and you're like,
oh, he's a psychopath. So what you're actually doing there is you are
excusing.
Well, you are either excusing it, or what's the word for like making something look bad? They're like vilifying mental health.
Yeah.
So they're either excusing the perpetrator, saying, "Oh, he has this disorder, which is inherent and he can't, you know."
Narcissistic personality disorder. I'm sick to death of seeing that on social media.
So what you're either doing is you're vilifying psychiatric disorders and saying that people with disorders
abuse, offend, kill.
And how many women who've got all these disorders, how many black women especially, have got all these disorders and have never fucking harmed a fly?
No, I know. I think radical feminism needs to be very, very careful in using personality disorders that I'm sorry to say this, but you don't fully understand, to excuse offenders, and
psychiatrists don't fully understand them either. That's the whole point.
But it's made up. But what I mean by that is, right, we've got to be careful as theorists, thinkers, speakers, writers, whatever, in using personality disorders as an excuse for crime, offending against women, violence against women, right? And then getting mardy when offenders, defence solicitors, go, well, he couldn't help it because he's got a personality disorder, or he's had an hard childhood, or he's got mental health issues. Whoa. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
If you use psychiatry and mental health to excuse abusers and offenders, don't fucking moan about it when defence barristers do it. Because we're setting it up. What we should be saying is what we should be doing is calling bullshit on all of it and saying, no, male violence is committed by men in a patriarchy, with entitlement, because they make an active choice to harm women and girls because they fucking want to.
Yeah.
There's no disorder there's no mental health issue, there's nothing in their childhood that caused them to do that. They chose to do it because they wanted to. And then similarly, on the other side of it, with victims, i.e. women and girls who are being subjected to that, we should completely reject all psychiatric diagnoses of women and girls who've been subjected to any abuse, trauma and violence. They're not mentally ill, they're traumatised.
Yeah.
And that's not a mental illness.
And when women are angry that they've had something done to them, they're even more likely to get diagnosed.
Yeah, I know. Angry women in mental health systems are the ones that will get the majority of the diagnoses.
But these are normal reactions to the oppressions that we're facing in everyday life.
Absolutely, they are. Every single woman... I've met women and girls who have told me, oh, my CPN's told me I've got treatment-resistant depression and that I'll never get better. I'm like, brilliant, that's useful, isn't it? What a great bit of advice you've been given. And then for me, who works in a trauma-informed way, and my staff in those jobs where we all work in a trauma-informed way with women and girls, how are we supposed to move that woman or girl forward after a rape or abuse when you've got some psychiatrist or some CPN telling them they've got treatment-resistant depression and they'll never get better and that their life is going to be like this forever and they've just got to get used to it? Yeah. They've just got to learn to, in their words, you've got to learn to manage it.
Yeah.
Like, no, absolutely not.
And some people are going to Dignitas, aren't they?
Yeah, with mental health. Yeah.
And mental health.
Yeah, that's terrifying. If you don't know what Dignitas is, it's like a, what's the word for it?
Assisted suicide.
Yeah. Self-euthanasia, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was that, I feel really strongly about this. There was the young woman, wasn't there, who essentially killed herself. That's what happened. Used euthanasia because she'd been sexually assaulted or raped, and then she had had a really, really rough time of it, really struggling with the flashbacks. Felt like every single day was a struggle. Wanted to kill herself. Kept telling the doctor she was going to kill herself anyway. And then said, I want to go and die and go to Dignitas. And 3 fucking psychiatrists signed that off.
Can I just say, and you don't have to agree with me, but it's in those sort of situations where I do think that perhaps some psychiatric drugs can help for a short period of time. Sometimes when you feel extremely suicidal and you can't help the flashbacks, you want to self-harm or commit suicide, but sometimes the psychiatric drugs can help in the short period of time. It
would depend what they were, though, because my view on that is that the only thing that would help in that situation that was medical or chemical would be a sedative.
Yeah.
I don't, because nothing psychotropic or psychoactive would help.
They've spoken about microdosing with ecstasy and stuff, MDMA, and I do think that perhaps has a place in very specific circumstances, but not as a long-term thing, and only to help them whilst dealing with therapy or whatever.
But therapy's months, so it would never be a short-term thing, would it?
No,
and that's the problem.
No, but there's a point. There can be points when it is too much.
I think that so my view on that is that at the point where it's too much, they need human compassion. They need constant support. They need somebody literally with them 24 hours. So whether that's real compassionate, somewhere to go where you think, I'm at fucking crisis and I'm going to fucking kill myself, somewhere to go, that would be my vision, would be somewhere you can safely go that is non-medicalising, where people will love you and support you and listen to you no matter how bad it gets, without suggesting that you're actually ill.
I agree. But still acknowledging and validating what you've been through.
Yeah.
Right, okay, unfortunately we're done. Shit. Uh...